My name is Rem Korinkin with Donnie Peters alongside me in the booth. We'll be here with you for the entire Last Chance series. We're taking Sunday off of streaming, but other than that, we'll be with you until next Thursday. As Nick Schulman makes the call, defending his big blind with King 3 off. Heads up between the two biggest stacks at the table, and Jack 3-10 gives Schulman a pair of threes, but more importantly, Samau with the open and the straight draw. Donnie, is there any significance in that pair of threes for Schulman?
I mean, yes, you connected with the board. You know, it improves your hand. You're not just being put in a spot where you have a, a king high. I think it's enough to continue here. This type of texture, I think Samau's probably going to be firing quite often. So I think you're going to peel one if you're Schulman. Evaluate kind of where you're at on the turn, depending on what Samau does as well. Ideally, you can just kind of get to some sort of cheap showdown and you win.
Schulman check call, the bet of 110K. Action now back on Samau on the turn. Still looking at just king queen high, but definitely a board that perhaps favors him to continue blasting.
Yeah, and I think these two players in particular, are deep enough that there can be some play.
Wow.
I mean, this is just a beautiful card here.
Broadway for Samau on the river. Schulman first to act. Hoping for a cheap showdown here, but Samau is definitely going to charge him. The Brazilian pro weighing his options here with 660 in the middle.
Yeah, just depending on how big he wants to go, how greedy he wants to get. 660 out there, and that looks like it's
585.
I'm sorry, 585.
Yeah, just about pot here. So
Samau with 7.7 million in career earnings. Putting out nearly a pot-sized bet here for Schulman.
10 seconds.
Wow, and Nick Schulman pulls the trigger in a massive way.
Oh, you're right.
Samau with the nuts, just verifying, makes the call. And Joao Samau with an enormous double-up after a Nick Schulman misstep. Just goes for the all-in check raise on the river. Donnie, what did we just witness?
I mean, all the heart from Schulman.
Action on Joe Sirach, 8-6 of diamonds in the small blind.
Unless they change the scheduling.
Looking at perhaps
so much off.
taking a little stab at the big blind of Ben Tollerine, but this might backfire.
Yeah,
Ben Tollerine, A6
I mean, that was always
offsuit.
expected, right?
Yeah.
He will have Sirach dominated if he makes the call here.
10 seconds.
Wow, he makes the call. Massive pot developing. 4.4 million in the middle, and Sirach, you can tell by the look of his face, not happy about this one. Oh my.
Also, the guarantees are never the guarantees because they have the 3% tax thing.
And then they add like the
All right, so it is
flights
Ben
or
Tollerine's
whatever.
tournament life on the line. Sirach has him covered by a few big blinds.
Well, not tax. Dealer gratuity is taken out of the guarantee.
Okay.
10, 6, 9, 2 hearts.
Found a lifeline.
Sirach with some life here. Counting those outs. He's got 7 of them.
Long.
Here's the turn. Is the jack of diamonds.
Yeah, it's queen.
And look at that. Sirach adding some more. 11 outs to send Ben Tollering to the rail, or else Sirach will be our short stack. Here's the river card. It's the queen of diamonds. And the river card sends Ben Tollering to the rail. And Joe Sirach, all of a sudden, chip leader with 5.1 million chips. That came out of nowhere.
Remco, of course, earlier talked about how well Wilson has performed in high rollers over the years, even though he's only been on the scene for a couple of years, you know, as has Tice. Tice a little bit more notable, though, than Brandon Wilson, but feels like every time there's a series down at Seminole Hard Rock in Florida, Wilson's crushing the 50K or 25K or whatever high roller they got running. Tice is going to check call here with the king high and the gutter. 4 on the turn. That gives Tice a pair of 4s. Let's see if Wilson has another bullet in him here.
1.4.
1.4.
A little bit over pot here from Wilson, 1.4 million into 1.25. Really making it hard for Tice to call here. Putting a lot of pressure on some of those more marginal and weaker hands. But Tice says, I'm sticking around. Doesn't take too long and makes the call. He does have the best hand. 7 of spades on the river. Check from Tice. Can Wilson find another shell? Can't imagine he thinks there's any world where his 6 high is good, so it's just, does he think he can ultimately come with this one, or is he going to get picked off? There it is. Look at this from Brandon Wilson, emptying the clip with the 6 high.
Wow.
This man came to play, sir.
I mean,
hello, Brandon Wilson.
Wilson currently schooling Landon Tice, if I may say so myself.
A couple of 10s for Brandon Wilson. Nice hand to start with, and on the button as well.
425.
425.
Absolute monster here, pocket tens. That's just how heads-up poker goes. Your opponent also needs to find something playable. And, you know, quick flashback, Donnie, to yesterday's match between Wilson and Landon Tice. Are we expecting Wilson to take a similar approach versus Ausmus, or will he perhaps be a little bit more concerned given the depth of Ausmus' experience in the live realm?
Check.
I mean, I think he'll take a very similar approach. I'm not sure what sort of experience these two have playing against one another. But I think, you know, Wilson has gotten to the point in his career where I think he's going to kind of go into any sort of match like this, playing his game, and then, of course, make the necessary adjustments. I think both of his opponents that he's had to face yesterday, Landon Tice, today being Jeremy Ausmus, like, they're both well-known players, so if you're in Wilson's shoes, I think you have an idea of how they're going to probably play, you know, approach certain things. You know, Jeremy is obviously very well studied, but also a very experienced live player, so can make some adjustments in that way. And then, you know, Tice is, I would say, much more theory and like solver heavy, so you go into the match with that sort of approach. See a check raise here right out of the gate from Ausmus, just attacking here. Interesting spot for Ausmus. I mean, he is kind of blocking some stuff here. That 5 of diamonds can block some continues from your opponent, both backdoor flush draws and some straight draws. Or some flush draws, I should say, not backdoor. And some straight draws, and then the queen you know, that blocks what the best kings, king, queen, and stuff like that. So the 7 here. Let's see if Ausmus wants to continue.
Wilson hanging tough after facing a check raise. The question is, how much more does Ausmus want to risk here? And how will that come across to Wilson? The king, of course, the only real card to be afraid of. And I think he just said 1.5.
Yeah, 60% pot here, so really just coming with it is Ausmus.
And look at this, Wilson facing the overcard, and the big bet comes along a second time.
That's it.
5.5 million in the middle. Absolutely massive pot developing here. Ausmus looking for a 6 or a queen, and it is not there. It's the 4 of hearts. Now, how do we proceed here? Do we have any options left, or do we just simply have to surrender?
I think this card, pairing the board on the river here, is just going to spark Ausmus to shut this one down.
I mean, would Ausmus play a hand like King 10?
Look at this.
Any
He is
different?
going
And
for it.
there it goes. Jeremy Ausmus pulls the trigger to show his opponent that he's not to be messed with. Brandon Wilson now in the tank. Wow. What a hand. Ausmus going 3 streets. And Donnie, we saw Wilson do the same thing to Landon Tice last night.
Yeah, I'm already getting kind of thoughts in my head that yesterday we saw the big bluff from Wilson that ultimately helped get him to the victory. I'm leaning here that he's going to call. Again, a pretty static card here on the river, not changing too much of this board composition, so I'm leaning that he's going to be able to find this call. I think it helps in Wilson's case that he doesn't have any diamonds in his hand, unblocking possible flush draws that Ausmus could check raise and then just decide to barrel off with.
Wilson does have plenty of time left to make his decision. Could the 4 be a card that Ausmus check raises on the flop? Could that be something he's representing here?
I would lean no. I think he would take more of a standard line of just check call with a 4.
So Ausmus really selling the story that he has a King 9, King 10 type hand. Just defending pre-flop. Just to recap here, 425 pre, Ausmus called. Then Wilson bet 250, Ausmus check raised to 750. As Ausmus took control, he fired 1.5 million on the turn, and now pulling the trigger for all of it on the river.
I mean, you mentioned specifically probably, and there
Wow!
it is.
Wilson makes the call. What a hero!
Did I have you
Brandon
covered?
Wilson takes all but 900,000 of Jeremy Ausmus chips on his way
think I might
to
have had a
potentially
hundred more, maybe.
winning back-to-back hands here at the 2025 PGT Last Chance. Wow, what a hand.
A couple of 7s here for Scutton. Had those 8s earlier and took out Chris Brewer. Another pair for him here.
You have like 4, 8.
I think a little less than that.
Okay, good. Whatever.
Nice one here for Zamani. The 2 biggest stacks could clash a little bit.
4 or 5-ish, somewhere in there.
10 seconds.
800.
Well, Zamani just going to come with it. 3-bet to 800,000. Really going to put the pressure on Scutton, and it's always good to be dealt a pair, especially when it's 5-handed, but those 7s do shrink up a little bit when, you know, the one stack that could ultimately take you out comes firing back at you. That said, I mean, if I recall some of our coverage of Scutton in the past, he's never really backed down at all. So
Yeah, what's the fun in that?
I'm not, I mean, no, listen, it's great entertainment, don't get me wrong. So I don't necessarily think that like a fold is 100% a given order here from him.
Scutton, of course, also aware of who he's up against, and what makes this even more fun is the fact that these are the 2 big stacks going head-to-head.
Look at this. He's going to call. And this pot is bigger than the stack of Kristen Foxen and Ren Lin. Okay.
Yep.
Here we go.
Scutton with a vulnerable pair. Zamani with a vulnerable drawing hand, but no longer the case as we have middle set versus the nut flush draw and 2 overs. We might see some fireworks.
Buckle up. Here we go. I would expect Zamani just to continue here as the pre-flop 3-better.
10 seconds.
And of course, I can't imagine Scutton is going anywhere. It just depends how he wants to play this one.
Yeah, Donnie, dive into that for me. What options does Scutton have here realistically?
I mean, call or fold. You know, he can, a little bit more conservative approach, can just call. You know, not necessarily that he's behind, but, you know, do you really want to play, what, a 9.5 million chip pot when your opponent could flop a flush here? Yes, of course. I mean, that'd be tricky. So he's just going to start this one off with a call and then see how it develops. Obviously, the ideal sense is you fill up on the turn, but...
Oh my God, he
Look at
does
that.
fill up on the turn. The 8 pairs. Scutton with the check mark. No more danger from those hearts. Now, how much does this slow Zamani down?
I mean, I'm not sure how many just naked 8s you can give Scutton.
10 seconds.
And then, you know, the 8 pairing probably makes it a little less likely that your opponent flopped a set, because I think it would be most likely that the sets would be 7s and 8s, right? I think Zamani's probably going to continue to put pressure on here.
Seconds.
660.
And he goes for 660, setting up, at least in the eyes of Scutton, if we're just looking at ranges versus ranges, perhaps the right value for a river shove.
Yeah, this feels kind of one of those bets where, like, Zamani kind of wants to control the amount that goes in here because he still has a lot of equity, but also, in an equal sense, put pressure on some hands. If Scutton's got some 9s, some 10s here, I mean, there's a lot of pressure being applied. Again, do you want to play a huge pot, possibly for stacks, when this is the one guy that can take you out of the tournament when there's 2 shorter stacks, well, 3 shorter stacks, but 2 that are, you know, much shorter. And we can obviously see that, you know, Scutton's got it here. He's not going anywhere. So for him, it's, do you want to call? Do you want to possibly raise here? I think you can just comfortably just call, you know, make sure you keep all those bluffs in hands like Zamani has, with just the naked hearts in them. Maybe he can come along. Yeah, and he's going to do just that. So, of course, you know, you don't, there's that chance that, you know, you give him an out. Let's say he flops a flush. Not that he would fold it, but you do give him an out if you were to raise here or jam here or whatever. Just keep all that stuff in. You got a hammer lock on this one,
I
so.
want to bet on what I think you should have.
4 million in the middle, and where Donnie mentioned on the flop that there was more money in the middle than Foxen and Lin had. Right now, there's more in the middle than anyone has other than Zamani and Scutton as the third 8 hits on the river. How much will this scare Scutton?
Yeah, you're not really liking this card here. The chances your opponent does have the overpair, he's obviously now
10 seconds.
pulled ahead of you, and that's just no bueno, sir. So
All in.
Wow,
Look at this.
Zamani shoves all in, and Scutton now has to wonder, am I up against any other pair?
Card in the history of river cards.
And there he says it, the
Yes, it
worst
is.
river card in the history of river cards.
I mean, that's just an absolutely brutal river card for Scutton.
What a bet from Zamani. Scutton put to the test,
Show a bluff.
and he folds.
Pakitan fold.
Zamani, show the cards, come on.
Pakitan fold.
He shows the ace-queen.
Oh, wow.
Very lucky player.
good river.
Nice hand.
Thanks. I mean, sort of.
I did think you had, I swear